So often, St. Paul talks in his letters about the difference between living according to the law and living according to the gospel. And we see that difference so very clearly represented in this parable of the Good Samaritan. Those who want to live by the law look at life in a very legalistic way, as this teacher of the law did. It is just a matter of saying he's going to fulfill the duties and what's required by the law, as though the law is somewhat abstract from him, apart from him. But those who live according to the gospel see that complying with the law is a matter also of observing how our lives are changed. What difference does it make to us? Isn't that true with the people who make vows in life, married couples or clerics, those committed in religious life? They take a promise, a vow, bonded to each other, and don't reduce it to just a set of tasks that each are going to be responsible for, as though it's some sort of a legalistic contract. That will never work. But rather, they have to attend to how their lives are changing year by year as they grow in that relationship, how the demands of the vows that they made really do enhance their lives, rather than just being some sort of abstract obligation outside of themselves. Living according to the gospel means an ongoing renewal of ourselves. And so this parable of the Good Samaritan gives us some indication of how we can make that transition from living only in a legalistic way to following the laws of God to following the gospel. We see, first of all, that this Samaritan, even though he's different, and the man in the ditch is not part of his own heritage, as he's probably a part just of the regular Jewish community, nonetheless stops. He sees that there is a demand for attention to this individual outside of his group. And that is true for us as well. We mature in our spirituality when we break through those kinds of barriers that separate us from one another, thinking that the concerns of others are no concern of ourselves simply because they're not part of our group. That, I think, is important for us to take to heart as we look at our own lives, whether or not we're growing in that appreciation. The second thing we notice is that this man gives his time, talent, and treasure. He realizes that another person can make demands on his time, talent, and treasure, and that the goods of the earth he has been given as a steward is not just for himself, but rather to do the work of God in the world. I know so many married couples, priests and religious, who are faithful to their own promises and their vows that they made, and yet realize that the time, talent, and treasure they've been given also must include others. Families who go to soup kitchens, priests who go the extra mile in helping in another situation beyond their own parish assignment, religious as well. I think it's important for us to grow in that way as well, to realize that the possessions we have are not just for ourselves. And finally, notice that this man goes about his business afterwards, and yet he'll come back. He's able to balance his own obligations that he has with caring for someone outside of his regular routine. That, I think, also is part of maturing, being able to have that balance, realizing that we just don't take care of our own, but that we can have room in our lives for people outside of our own families, outside of our own nation. That, I think, has always been the hallmark of our country, giving foreign aid to other countries, and why we're much better off as a nation, because we're appreciated throughout the world as those who act like the Good Samaritan. So today, as we continue this journey of growing in our faith in this ordinary time, let's look to the example of the Good Samaritan. Let's look to the example of those who vow their lives in married life, in the priesthood, and in religious life. Those who are willing time and again to give witness to the fact of reaching beyond their own families and their own boundaries, their own communities, realizing that the talents, time, and treasure they have are for God's purposes, but also being able to live the balanced life of taking care of those who we are responsible for, but also reaching out to those who are in need.